This video is sponsored by Electronic Arts. Hi everyone, my name is Tanya. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you are new here. I'm so excited to be finally sharing this build as I created the official Camp Gibbi Gibbi that launches with the Adventure Awaits expansion pack that comes out very soon. I was so excited that the Sims team reached out to me and asked me to build 3 different lots for this new world of Gibbi Point. And over the next few days, I will be posting all of those speed builds. I do want to mention though that the software is not final. You'll see my name bouncing around the screen, and especially in these builds for the world, you'll see the worlds aren't complete. There might be placeholder buildings or placeholder items. The water isn't 100% at the final texture because this was really early on in the process. Like, the name of the pack wasn't even in the game yet. I didn't know it was called Adventure Awaits. So keep that in mind that this is not final software, but I do think it's really cool to show this early on in the process. And I'm so thankful that I got to do this for a second time because I did create a few of the lots for high school years as well. So thank you again to the Sims team for trusting me to create some of these builds. I am so incredibly excited to share them with you. And if you're thinking about picking up the Adventure Awaits expansion pack, it would mean the world to me if you would consider using my creator code Gryphi at checkout. It's a great way to support me as a creator and it doesn't cost anything extra. You just enter it at checkout and I'll receive a small commission on your purchase price. So thank you for considering, and thanks to EA for sponsoring this portion of the video. But back to the build. I was so excited that I got to build a kids camp. That is so cool. And right now I am just kind of sketching out what I was thinking of creating because I knew I needed to have like a main mess hall, but I also needed to have cabins that had space for up to 8 campers, 2 camp counselors, and a camp director. So right now I am building what is actually going to be one of the cabins for our campers, and there's going to be 2 of those, and each of them will have 4 beds. So 2 sets of bunk beds. They end up actually being really cute. And an interesting thing is at this point, I only have some of the items. The color scheme is going to change drastically, and the layout I go with in the beginning is not what I keep. I end up playing around with it and figuring it out as I add different buildings. So I was kind of originally thinking these 2 would be cornering the back of the lot, and that would be a cute way to approach this. But once I finish building the mess hall, I end up rearranging things as I figure out a better layout. It was kind of like a puzzle to put together because this isn't that big of a lot and part of it is over the water, and I had all of these different cabins I wanted to include plus a ton of different activities. I knew I wanted to have some decks that would go out over the water so your Sims could hang out there, either jumping into the water, fishing, just hanging out. There's also like kayaking that's added with this pack. There was a lot of things I wanted to include, so it was definitely a process to get to the final version, but I'm very pleased with it. This is one of my favorite builds I think I've ever done, and one of the fun things about creating a build for a pack is I wasn't able to use any cheats. So trying to do everything I wanted to without move objects was a challenge, but I rose to the occasion and I think it came out pretty cute. It just makes me so happy and excited to think about all of you getting to have your Sims go to camp for the first time and them coming to Camp Gibbi Gibbi. Of course, you can build your own as well, and there's also another really cool camp that'll be available on the gallery that Danielle Builds created, so there's options, but I am so excited for y'all to play with this. If you do, please send me screenshots over on Blue Sky. I would love to see them. But talking more about what's going on right now, this is the mess hall. I knew I wanted to have like a step down, so there's the main deck and then a lower portion where I was going to put a bunch of picnic benches so your Sims can hang out in this area. I originally wanted it to be over the water, but I do end up changing that in the end as I thought it would work better in the center of the lot and then just having the dock going into the water, and there actually ends up being 2 docks. And right now I'm just grabbing a bunch of kayaks out of the build and buy to take a peek at them, and I will be placing them more precisely later. And I also didn't right away place them where they were usable because I was just excited about it. Anyway, right now I am figuring out where some doors can go. I also grabbed a couple of palm trees as they're going to be one of the main trees I use for the landscaping on this lot. And this is where I thought I was going to originally have some of these bedrooms for the counselors and the director. And I quickly realized this was not going to be the best way to go about this, but I'm trying it currently, and I also needed to include like a large bathroom in here, a large kitchen, a space for your Sims to actually have all the tables and chairs. They're going to be in here and on the balcony, and I used the picnic benches for both of them. And the kitchen I'm going to be creating now is way smaller than the final kitchen. It ends up actually being a very large space, so your Sims are going to have plenty of room to go ahead and prep meals. Maybe having like the kids help and stuff could be fun as well. Also, at this point, I don't have that many of the items from the pack, so you'll see like some of the doors and windows and things, but a lot of the furniture I'm placing down in pretty much every aspect of this is base game stuff, because most of it I don't have yet. I had like a list of what the items were going to look like. I knew the vibe of the pack and just had to imagine how certain things were going to work once I got access to them, because when you're working on this, it's very early in the process. It was months ago. So for the most part, I was building with base game items, and then I will slowly be swapping them out. But you also might see a couple of items that are like bright yellow blocks, like yellow and green blocks. Those are like placeholder. It has the title of what the item is going to be, but the item's not there yet. So you'll see me place a couple of those down as well over time. Just wanted to explain what you're seeing. Anyway, at this point, I thought I had the layout figured out with the bedrooms, and I'm adding some of the decks that I want on the outside and rearranging a little bit so I can make the area with the tables and chairs a little bit bigger. I wanted to make sure I could have at least 2 of the picnic benches in here. I go up to 4 at one point, but I end out with only 2 in this space, and then there's 2 outside as well. It allows a lot more space for Sims to navigate. And I also considered putting one of these little, like, I guess public restrooms or sort of outhouse type bathrooms, because the kids' cabins don't have their own bathrooms. But what I ended up actually doing in the end is just making sure that everything they would need is in the main mess hall. And then the cabins I will be creating later on for the counselors and director, they do have their own full bathrooms. And it looks like I just removed the bedrooms from the main building, and I'm starting to rearrange things. I thought the bathrooms might work better at the end of the hall. I moved them around a couple of different times, but we do end up in the end having stalls for toilets and stalls for showers, but I don't add them till way later because for some reason it didn't occur to me to add showers. I don't know why, but don't worry, they did get added eventually. And this is pretty close to the final shape of this building, where we have the hall in the front, the bathroom is at the end of the hall, and then this big square room is going to be the kitchen, with the little one off of it being a small storage room, which I thought was just a fun addition, just an extra space to make this building the shape I wanted, but not add too much more to it or make the kitchen a weird shape. So I just have like some storage trunks and stuff in there, and I will change a couple of those items out later on once I have access to more of the catalog for Adventure Awaits. But here in the kitchen, I am using the industrial counter set from base game and picking out our fridge and all of that. And later on, one of my favorite new items from this pack, which sounds silly because it has nothing to do with like adventuring really, is there's a new thing of hanging pots and pans and like a colander and stuff that you can hang on the wall. And I love kitchen clutter, so I was very excited about that, and that will be added into this room a little bit later on, but for right now I'm just laying it out. And the interiors and exteriors right now still have this really light wood tone, but I am going to be changing that to a dark brown in the end, and it changes actually pretty soon, I'm fairly certain. But first we're going to duplicate the cabins I created on the left side of the lot over here to be the ones for the counselors and the director. And I'm just kind of deleting the items that are in them so I could put double beds instead. Although one of them later on, I decide to have 2 single beds so that the 2 counselors share a cabinet and then the director has their own. And this is going to be the little bathroom I have in the corner of each of them. I think it's a pretty simple layout, and it worked quite nicely to be the same size as the other cabins, although the other ones have a lot more beds in them because I wanted to make sure there was activities and 4 beds in each of the kids' cabins. And by leaving out the bathrooms in there, that allowed me to have the space for everything I needed in those cabins. Anyway, over here I am just adding some more fencing, and then I also am placing down a couple of these campfires with the new chairs, the new campfires as well. There's a lot of really cool swatches, so just playing around with that, and then I am starting the process of rearranging what I have. You can see some terrain paint from like a first attempt that I didn't like, so ignore that. But I am moving the 2 cabins next to each other on this side, and then doing 2 over on the other side that are going to be pretty much exactly parallel to those. I wanted it to be mirrored and very symmetrical. It felt like it was the best way to lay out this lot, and this is approximately the layout we are going to have. I'm going to get rid of that standalone bathroom thing, and then these are going to be our two little entrance points so you can come in over on the camper side or on the counselor side. And I also am going to be creating a second one of these decks or second one of these docks to continue the symmetrical look of the camp and also just have another space for your Sims to get out on the water. So just adjusting the size of this one and the shape of it, and then I should be duplicating it and figuring that out. But I also decided to go ahead and move all of the archery equipment over to the counselor side because I feel like that's going to be a very supervised activity. It seems pretty dangerous for kids to have bow and arrow, so I moved that over there, and the play equipment is more so on the kids side. And now I am just starting to change the colors of all the cabins. I decided to just go ahead and delete and copy them over instead of having to change all of the swatches. It was just a little bit quicker that way, and I really like the dark wood. I think it looks a lot better. So continuing that process of copying everything over, copying the roofs, changing all of the swatches on the mess hall building and all of the stairs and fences and everything, it was a little frustrating, and I did have some issues early on with a glitch, which I'm only mentioning it because it's very obvious in the footage, where if I changed swatches, they didn't stay that changed swatch, so I would delete an item and place it back down in the correct swatch. That is not a continuing glitch. That is just something that was in the access I had like months ago, like way before this got announced. So you might see me deleting an item and then placing it back down in a different swatch. That's why. Anyway, here is where the different picnic benches are going to be in the mess hall. Like I said, I do decide to change that down to just 2 instead of 4 later on, but I do like how the 4 looked. And then I am working on a little bit of landscaping. I grabbed the palm trees out here. We also have some signage, which I think I get rid of in the end because the little entry points, these arches that I have, kind of work as signage anyway. So I'm not sure the middle one was necessary. And I decided to line out the entry here with these fences, which I'm going to be swapping out as well to match the ones that I have on the cabin. But I was playing around with this one that has some metal accents in it first, and then continuing with getting some more trees. I was just kind of looking what was in the environment of this area and trying to duplicate that. And a lot of it was palm trees, but I have a mixture of things, and landscaping was such a challenge because of lack of move objects. I think I did an okay job, but it was so interesting trying to place plants as close together as possible, but not being able to alt place or use move objects because they just couldn't go that close. So landscaping was definitely a challenge, and it's usually one of my favorite things to do, so that was kind of fun. So just continuing placing down some more of these low-lying flowers and getting some of the small palm tree pieces around as well. I also grabbed some flowers in a few different places, but I wanted to keep the landscaping fairly minimal in variety so that it looked more realistic and didn't take away from the cabins. So just placing some more of that down, and this is where I am going to be changing out and having 2 of these docks. So I combine them in the middle at first to get them to the spot I want them to be, and I'm counting it out so that it could be as far away as I wanted it to and be symmetrical. And then I delete the middle, and there are our two docks. I thought that was really cool. Also, we do have a slide now with this pack, which is really exciting. We have a regular slide, and then there's a few different ones for the modular playgrounds, and there's also a pool slide. And I do want to mention that I also built the official playground that comes with this pack, Plumbird Park, and I will have a speed build of that out on the channel sometime soon as well. And the modular playgrounds are so cool. I can't wait for you to see them. Anyway, we are back at the mess hall, and I am changing out the windows for these larger screened windows. I think they just work with the space a lot better and allow in more light. And so I duplicated the door so we have a two wide door in the middle. And then I am arranging some of these tables. I also ended up having a games table up on the upper deck, so your Sims can play some cards or whatever games they would like, really. I just thought that that would be a fun activity to have. And an activity I'm going to be placing down here shortly, which is another new thing that comes with the pack, is paper crafting. So you can make those little, I don't know what to call them. Everyone had a different name for them, and I can't remember what my name for them was growing up, but I've heard a lot of people call them cootie catchers. Anyway, you can do that and a lot of other things. But finally, we are now seeing the new bunk beds that came with this pack. I think they are so fun. I really like the colors. And I tried to color coordinate at first, but I am actually going to be changing them a little bit later and getting a variety of colors within one building instead of trying to make all 4 match. I have like 2 that will have the same metal color and then the other 2 as well. But I think it was more fun to have a combination of colors in each of these cabins. And then I'm also placing down some of the other new items that I just got access to. So there's a dresser that has some stickers and stuff on it. It's definitely a little bit more worn. There's this coat rack sort of item that has all sorts of clutter in it. And then we're finally seeing our first yellow box of the video. I mentioned them earlier on, but I do end up placing down a couple of those as bedside tables in these 2 cabins, and you can see the paper crafting item as well that I placed on the table. I was really happy that this was an independent item that you could place on a table or desk instead of it being tied to one of the activity tables for kids, because I feel like we just have too many of those in the game, so it was just very refreshing, to be honest. And I think the things you can do with that item are really cool. Anyway, moving to the second cabin, you can see me picking out some curtains. I'm pretty sure I changed these later on for some longer curtains that I don't have yet. These ones are more so meant to look like they're for tents, because you can sort of build a tent with this pack. There's some new wallpapers and roof textures and stuff that looks like a tent, so you can make like a fancy one. I think that's kind of cool, but I placed them down here at first as I was experimenting with what I already had access to. And I also decided to make the roof be a little bit taller, and I played around with adding some additional roof pieces here over the porch. At first I just had a flat roof, but I decided to do this instead, and I was very happy with that decision. I feel like it just adds some nice shape to the build. So just duplicating the new roof pieces and playing around with the roof trim as well. I just wanted to make sure everything matched, so I'm just making sure to actually copy and paste instead of just adjusting the roof on each one. I just think it's a better way to get it all to match. And then I'm starting to draw out the new terrain paint, which is mostly symmetrical, but I have some paths that lead to the various staircases and stuff in this area and to the cabins themselves. And I just really like how it all flows together. I will be adding some more terrain paints and textures and stuff on top of that, so it's not exactly how it looks now, but I feel like it really helped to show the pathways that are mostly taken on this lot. I also love this little campsite area where I guess the whole thing is a campsite. But this little fire pit I placed down with some chairs around it, I think I changed it to only 4 chairs later on, but it's surrounded by plants and it just looks so cozy and cute. I loved this little area, and I can just imagine all of the kids and the counselors gathering around here and roasting marshmallows late at night, telling ghost stories, that kind of thing. And that's definitely what I was imagining while I was decorating it. I also feel it's important to say I've been to a camp. I haven't ever gone to camp. I've been to like an event at a kids camp before as an adult, but I never went to camp as a kid. So it was just so cool to be able to kind of create what I wanted to see in a camp and be inspired by a lot of the media I've seen of what camp is like. So I'd love to know what your memories are of going to camp as a kid. What things you think are great that were included here, or things you wish could have been included. And if you think the way summer camp is portrayed in media is accurate to what your own experience has been like. I always find these things so interesting. And you know what? We're at about that point in the video where I'm very curious who is still watching at almost 18 minutes in. So if you are still watching, could you comment, "I brought my imaginary friend to camp," and we'll see how many of you actually brought your imaginary friend to camp. Oh, and what are you thinking about the imaginary friends being added back to the game? I know we had them in The Sims 3 with Generations, and they were a very terrifying inclusion in the past, and they look a little scary now too, depending on which doll that you decide to play with. And I'm not entirely sure how I feel about them, but I would love to know how you're feeling about them. Quickly shifting gears away from imaginary friends now though, and I am starting to decorate the counselor and director cabins. And one of the things I needed to do was rearrange how I laid everything out in the bathroom, because where the toilet was, without move objects, I couldn't place toilet paper next to it, and I didn't want to put it above the toilet. So I did rearrange that, and then figured out a better layout for where the bed and the dresser were gonna go, and then I just duplicated that that over to the second one. And then we're moving on back to the mess hall and then back outside. I decided to move the kayaks so that they were actually functional, because where I placed them, they weren't. And then I realized they actually still needed to be moved out a little bit further. So I will be moving them again. And I also now have some of these ladders that allow your Sims to climb down into the water. We originally got some of those from Island Living, but there's some new ones with Adventure Awaits. So I made sure to place those down, and then I will be working on some of the playground equipment that is on this lot. And the rest of this video is going to be kind of bouncing around and making changes here and there, as we have the general structure down already on this build. And what I have left is to make changes on things I didn't like and swap out items for ones that are actually from Adventure Awaits, since I still have a lot of base game stuff sitting around this lot. So in the cabins, I am going to be swapping out the rugs for new ones. And here I'm also starting to add a little bit more color in here. Instead of having all 4 of the bunks match, like I mentioned earlier, I have green on one side and blue on the other. And then I'm looking at all of the different rugs that come with this pack. They are so cute, the swatches. There's a fishing one, there's like bears, there's some cute, just like neutral ones as well. And then there's going to be another rug added too. I'm not sure if it's added at this point or not. I don't think it is, because I'm still using one of the base game ones. Also, we got the new curtains. These are the longer ones. And I started with just these yellow ones. I don't think I kept the yellow the same in both, but that is something that I know I started with. We shall see if I finished with it or not. But I just wanted to make sure there was lots of decorations and clutter in here. So I'm grabbing a backpack. We also considered having some books or a lamp, and there's going to be a new lamp that came with this pack as well that I'm going to be putting on the bedside table. And then in the second cabin, I decided to go with one of the bunk beds that has the bright yellow metal at first. We're going to be playing around with the different color options. And this cabin, I would say, is a little bit more colorful than the other one. I definitely leaned into color in this particular one, whereas the other one, it's more colorful than it was. It's just not as vibrant. So yeah, just moving a couple of things around. I decided not to keep the exact same layout in each of the cabins, just to make them feel a little bit different. So I am moving where the table is and getting a different rug. I changed the swatch on the dresser, and there's also a large bookcase in here. I just really wanted it to feel like these are spaces that have changed over time and evolved over time through the years of campers coming in and out. Hopefully I achieved that. You can let me know. The Sims team seemed to be very happy with it, and I was very excited about that, because I was a little nervous about going into this one, especially the fact that all 3 of the builds that I created for this pack are community lots. And I don't know if you've been around the channel for a little bit, but if you have, I don't build a lot of community lots because I don't feel like I'm very good at them. So creating 3 of them for a new expansion pack, I was a bit nervous. Anyway, we are back in the mess hall now, and I'm adding in our showers. Right now they're out in the open, but I will be closing them off into their own stalls a little bit later on, because your Sims wouldn't use them if I left them that way. They would be embarrassed. So that will be changing. And right now I'm just adding a little bit more landscaping. We're just kind of hopping around the build and making changes here and there, as the process of working on a pack like this is you have building time, and then you submit your lots, and then you meet. It's like every couple of weeks or so. It's different. I don't even remember the exact time frame, but that's why it's in stages of being like, oh, okay, now I have these new items, or now I'm making this change based on getting things reviewed and what we all thought would work best. So you can see I have some new items now. There's some new chairs that I placed in the cabin. There's actually going to be a new table too that I'm going to be using instead of the ones I have in here. And then this is the new bedside table and the new lamp. So the bedside table that used to be a big yellow box, it looks like that. It's like a little trunk. It's really cute. But continuing to change out some of the colors in these rooms and play around with the new items that I just got access to. I wanted to hang up some banners under the beds, and I also got some of these like paddles. I think that's what they're called. They're not called paddles. They're called oars. I don't know why I forgot that. And I hung those in various spaces around the cabins as well. And I believe we might be getting access to another rug here soon, so that I can go ahead and, yep, I did. So I can place that in the different rooms. One of them has a swatch that has little kayaks on it, which I thought was so cute. I don't know if I kept that one or not in that space, but I thought it was really pretty. And of course that made sense for the more colorful of the 2 kids' cabins. So of course I had to try it in there. And now we're back in the bathroom in the mess hall, trying to figure out the shower outdoor situation. So I'm swapping them out for some base game ones instead of the ones from the pack. And I'm not sure if yet I'm going to be putting them in stalls or not. It doesn't look like it. It looks like I just put some half walls between them. I hadn't realized. I just thought that those ones would match the room a little bit better than the outdoorsy looking ones that I used in the counselor cabins. And then I'm adding some decor in here. So we have some more of these little photos and pennants. And I also got a nice shelf over on one side as well. I really like the decor from this. And I'm finally swapping out the picnic benches for the new ones from the pack. There's a variety of colors and they're all really worn down. And some of them even have painting on them of like kids' handprints. So I thought that that was a really cute thing to add for the camp. I ended up swapping out the ones outside and inside and also rearranging some of the clutter and functional items that I put on them. So I do have some of the paper crafting and I think there's a lantern on one of them. Some books. Like I just wanted it to feel lived in and also have some functional items that your Sims can use. And then I'm swapping out the base game lanterns for some new ones and adding some rugs to our counselor cabins. I also ended up swapping out the beds to be these metal framed ones instead so that they match the rest of the camp. And I experimented and went back and forth a few different times on whether or not I wanted this accent wall of a wallpaper behind the beds. I did end up keeping it in the end, but I get rid of it and then come back to it. And I just think it's a fun little addition for these because I wanted these to be slightly nicer cabins. And then I also did swap out the bedside tables for some base game ones just because they felt a little bit more, I don't know, adult, nicer instead of just having like a trunk as a bedside table, which is what I did in the kids' cabin and I love. I just thought it would be a better idea to have a regular bedside table for the counselors. Anyway, it looks like I just got the final update of items, so I am placing some more of those around. I also did grab the same bedside table that I put in the kids' cabins in the storage room because it's a little trunk. I'm also figuring out some lighting outside, and there was a new clock that I added to a couple of different places that is made out of darts for a dartboard, which I thought was really fun. But yeah, just figuring out the lighting because it was very dark out here. And for some reason, I didn't even consider that until this point. So grabbing tons of these little lights to light up the area. You're definitely going to want to be able to see if anyone decides to do some archery in the middle of the night. I don't think I would advise that, but you know, it's The Sims and we've all done worse things in The Sims than that. So I think some lighting would be a good idea. And now I'm fixing up some terrain paint. I wanted to make it look like the swing set has been used. There's always like the dirt messed up underneath it from your feet hitting the ground. And I know I already mentioned it, but I'm so excited to finally have a slide in the game. It's just wild that we didn't have that until now. That's just such a normal like playground type item. I guess we didn't have playgrounds until now. They were added in the latest base game update. And a lot of the functionality and like items you would want from them, you're probably going to want the modular playgrounds from this pack. But a slide, I'm just kind of shocked we hadn't had yet, but I do love it. I'm so happy to finally have slides in the game. And I just feel like it's going to be so much fun to play as kids. Here, I'm finally swapping out one of the beds in the counselor space so that there are two counselors in here that are sharing. And then we have the director in the other cabin. And I just think it looks a little bit nicer. And I also swapped out the bedside tables again because we got these new ones that I hadn't had access to before, which are like little tray ones. And here are the final tables that I end up swapping to in the cabins as well. I really like the colors on them. I was just very impressed with the vibe that they went with for this pack. I thought it was really fun. So yeah, just swapping some of that out. I also had this trunk that was added that I wanted to include over in the corner that has like some books and a lantern and stuff on it, and changing my mind so many times about which swatches I wanted to use for the bed. I really liked the yellow, but I don't think I actually ended up keeping it in the end. Instead, I am just playing around with some other items and finally getting the pots and pans on the wall that I've been talking about since the beginning of the video. I'm so excited about those. But that is pretty much it for this build. I really hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. You can also subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more and click that bell to be notified when I upload. And a massive thank you to my YouTube members for your continued support. If you'd like to become a member yourself, you can click the join button below the video or the link in the description. And thank you again in advance if you do decide to use my code when making a purchase of the Adventure Awaits expansion pack on the EA app. That really does support me as a creator, so thank you, thank you, thank you, and please enjoy the screenshots. I will see you all in the next one. Bye, everyone.